It's well said, one is not a company, but two is. Doing it together has got its own pleasure, and the achievement will be doublefold, treblefold, or even more. Welcome once again to News Analysis. News Analysis, a weekly magazine on current affairs. To begin with the main points in a nutshell. British tabloid News of the World closing down. Syria, thousands protest in restive city of Hama. Bride promise in cancer testing fell apart. South Sudan, the newest nation, is full of hope and problems too. Space shuttle Atlantis in historic final liftoff. DR Congo plane crashes at Kisangani airport. Now the news in detail. British tabloid News of the World closing down. The News of the World will be closed down in the wake of the phone hacking scandal. It was announced last week. The last Sunday's edition will be the last ever after private eyes hired by the paper were accused of hacking thousands of numbers, including those of murder victims and relatives of dead war heroes. News International, which owns a 168-year-old tabloid, announced it would be axed, adding that the alleged practices were inhuman and had no place in our company. Chairman James Murdoch revealed the news to shocked staff at the paper's office in London last afternoon. In a statement, Mr. Murdoch said, having consulted senior colleagues, I have decided we must take further decisive action with respect to the paper. This Sunday will be the last issue of the News of the World. Colin Myler will edit the final edition of the paper. Mr. Murdoch said this Sunday's edition of the paper would have no advertisements and all the revenue from the sales would go to good causes. He said, while we may never be able to make up for the distress that has been caused, the right thing to do is for every penny of circulation revenue we receive the weekend to go to organizations, many of whom are long-term friends and partners, that improve life in Britain and are devoted to treating others with dignity. The paper has rocked over the past week by revelations that murdered teenager Millie Dowler's phone had been hacked. It was also claimed that the parents of murdered schoolgirls Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman were targeted. Victims of London's 7/7 tube bombings were also hacked. The families of soldiers killed in Iraq and Afghanistan and Princess Diana's inquest lawyer Michael Mansfield-Quessy were among the latest to reveal they may have been targeted. Detectives investigating the scandal have said there could be 4,000 potential victims. Scotland Yard Deputy Assistant Commissioner Suze Akers added that hundreds more believe they may have been targeted. Rupert Murdoch, chairman of the chief executive of the Sun's owner News Corporation, has condemned the phone hacking allegations. He said recent allegations with respect to the News of the World are deplorable and unacceptable. Rebecca Brooks, News International chief executive and the editor of the News of the World at the time of Millie Dowler's hacking, has said she is sickened by the allegations and has promised the strongest possible action against those responsible. She added she has pledged her full cooperation with a police inquiry into the scandal. Later in the day, James Murdoch said that he was satisfied with the standard of ethics of Ms. Brooks. He added, I am satisfied with Rebecca, her leadership of this business, her standard of ethics and her standard of conduct throughout her career are very good. The hacking probe was reopened in January after News International executives went to police voluntarily with the news information discovered in an internal investigation. The police inquiry has focused mainly on celebrities who feared they were targeted by rogue private investigator Glenn McClure, jailed in 2007 for phone hacking on behalf of the News of the World. James Murdoch added in his statement, "The good things the News of the World does have been sullied by behavior that was wrong. Indeed, if recent allegations are true, it was inhuman and has no place in our company." Syria, thousands of protests in restive city of Hama. Tens of thousands of people are taking part in an anti-government protest in the Syrian city of Hama, activists say. Organizers have called on demonstrators to express their total rejection of the government's decision to hold a national dialogue conference on Sunday. Earlier, the US and French ambassadors visited Hama to show their solidarity. Syria's interior minister said the US envoy had met several saboteurs and denounced the direct and unacceptable interference in its internal affairs. Tanks were deployed on outskirts of Hama last weekend after the central city witnessed the largest protests since anti-government demonstrations began in March. At least 22 people in Hama have since been shot dead by security forces. No one can predict what's going to happen in the next few days, one resident told the reporters in Arabia. Many families have left Hama for the neighboring villages. Incitement despite the crackdown, people once again took to the streets of Hama after noon prayers on Friday, demanding to overthrow of President Bashar al-Assad and rejecting an offer of dialogue, activists and witnesses said. Bright promise in cancer testing fell apart. When Julia Jacobs found out she had lung cancer, she was terrified but realized that her hope lay in getting the best treatment medicine could offer. So she got a second opinion, then a third. In February 2010, she ended up at Duke University, where she entered a research study whose promise seemed stunning. Doctors would assess her tumor cells looking for gene patterns that would determine which drugs would best attack her particular cancer. She would not waste precious time in ineffective drugs or trial and error treatment. The Duke program, considered a breakthrough at the time, was the first fruit of the new genomics, a way of letting a cancer cell's own genes reveal the cancer's weaknesses. But the research at Duke turned out to be wrong. Its gene-based tests proved worthless, and research behind them was discredited. Ms. Jacobs died a few months after treatment, and her husband and other patients' relatives are suing Duke. The episode is a stark illustration of serious problems in a field in which the medical community has placed great hope, using patterns for large groups of genes or other molecules to improve the detection and treatment of cancer. Companies have been formed and products have been introduced that claim to use genetics in this way, but assertions have turned out to be unfounded. While researchers agree there is great promise in this science, it's yet to yield many reliable methods for diagnosing cancer or identifying the best treatment. Instead, as patients and their doctors try to make critical decisions about serious illnesses, they may be getting worthless information that is based on bad science. The scientific world is concerned enough that two prominent groups, the National Cancer Institute and the Institute of Medicine, have begun examining the Duke case. They hope to find new ways to evaluate claims based on emerging and complex analysis of patterns of genes and other molecules. So far, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has generally not enforced its regulation of tests created by individual labs because until recently such tests were relatively simple and relied heavily on the expertise of a particular doctor, said Erica Jefferson, a spokeswoman for the agency. But now the lab's offering more complex tests on a large scale. The FDA is taking a new look at enforcement. South Sudan, the newest nation, is full of hope and problems too. After 5 decades of guerrilla struggle and 2 million lives lost, the flags are flapping proudly here in the capital. The new national anthem is blasting all over the town. People are toasting oversized bottles of White Bull beer, a local brew, and children boogieing in the streets. Free at last reads a countdown clock, but from the moment it declares independence on Saturday, the Republic of South Sudan, the world's newest country and Africa's 54th state, will take its place at the bottom of the developing world. A majority of its people live on less than $1 a day. A 15-year-old girl has higher chance of dying in childbirth than she does of finishing primary school. More than 10% of children do not make it to the 5th birthday. About 3/4 of adults cannot read. Only 1% of those households have a bank account.